What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning The Dr. Vibe Show. I have hosted and produced over 2,000 epic conversations over the last 10 years. And what makes our conversations epic? We don't do interviews. We do conversations. What is up, everybody? It is Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show. As always, I'd like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. Also know I'm a certified empowerment coach and president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching and Communications. And it is Monday, January 29th, and I think where I am and where my friend is, it's snowing. So
it's not snowing anymore, thank goodness. You just got rain now.
You just got rain now. So it's sort of in sync on what we're going to be chatting about tonight, because we want to be in places that are, as much as possible, nice with the weather. So you'll figure that out in a minute. Just give us a minute. So our returning friend is Dr. Cami J. Anderson. She has published extensively in both English and Spanish in scholarly and trade journals, as well as in national U.S. news publications. She has traveled to 17 countries across the globe for academic and professional endeavors. I wonder how many she just traveled to just for fun, but we'll get to that. She is a strong advocate for study abroad, in particular for students of color, a loving mother to 4 wonderful bilingual children. Cami has a vested interest in the construction of identity with bilingualism. She has published a book, Language, Identity, and Choice, Raising Bilingual Children in a Global Society, which talks about her own experiences raising her children bilingual. And she is with us tonight, finally, to talk about Black traveling and living abroad. So welcome back to the Dr. Vibe Show, Dr. Cami J. Anderson. How are you?
Thank you. I am doing well. Thank you. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday
to you, too. It wouldn't be a Monday without some Monday issues, right? But I think everything is great.
Challenges. You know what? Challenges just show where you are and how much you want. It's not over until we win.
Exactly.
So we won the battle and the war. For the people who haven't met you, because you have been on once before, can you give a little background about yourself?
Yes, well, you gave a really wonderful bio. I thank you for that. So yes, I am the founder and CEO of Bilingual Brown Babies, and on top of that, I'm also an associate professor of communication at Kennesaw State University, and there I also am the associate director of the honors program, where I'm helping to make sure that our honor students get the opportunities to study abroad and to have experiences overseas, as well as their academic experiences in the classroom, trying to give them some international flair to how they're being able to shape their academic career.
Excellent. How did travel get into your life?
Let's see. I actually got my first suitcase at 18 months old. But it was because I would go to DC every summer to spend time with my grandmother while my mother was able to work full time without having to worry about childcare. So I've always been traveling. I've got on my first plane ride, I think, at 6 months old. But I didn't take my first international trip until the summer before my senior year in high school. A really good friend of mine, her parents said, "We're going on vacation. We're going to the Bahamas. Do you want to go?" Sure, I'm not going to turn that down. So my first trip was actually to the Bahamas, and then I did study abroad in college, and I've worked overseas, and I've also gone overseas for other professional development activities as well.
I want to ask, when you took that first trip outside of your country, what did your mother have to say? Was she worried?
My mother has never really been worried about me traveling. She just, so long as I come back in one piece, she's good. So she wasn't really as stressed about it. I think she was more envious than she was stressed, because she wanted to go too.
So when did the passion come from me having these experiences to empowering other people to have those experiences?
Once I would say that I was working for a relief and development agency, and I was doing a lot of travel to a lot of Latin American countries through that. So I was going to Colombia a lot. I was going to El Salvador and Guatemala quite a bit for work. But in Colombia specifically, I was working with the Afro-Colombian population. So being able to see the Blacks that live in Colombia and some of the things that they were dealing with at the time, it was dealing with displacement and all of that stuff. But it came to me, it's like, oh my gosh, what if other people can see that there are folks that look like us that are overseas, and being able to figure out how do I make this something that is fun and accessible to other people. So after I left working for that Legal Development Agency, I decided to start teaching in the K through 12 system. So I taught middle school. So I had this whole trip planned. We're going to take these children to Spain, and it's going to be great. And then a war broke out, and the trip was canceled. But the way that we talked about it, the way that we rallied the parents around them being able to go, the parents were really, really interested, and the students were just as excited, so much so that a lot of those students ended up doing study abroad when they got to high school because they didn't get a chance to do it in middle school. So being able to just open my eyes to the various differences of culture and of people and those types of interactions, it was the best. It seemed like the best way to be able to share that would be with other youth, so that they can be able to see that and see beyond their block, so to speak.
Doing that first trip, the young people, were they nervous? Were you nervous being responsible for all those young people?
Oh, you're always nervous about taking somebody else's children somewhere.
Yeah. And even further, and going even before that conversation piece, was it a hard sell to the parents?
It was at first, which I was in my naivete, I was surprised by it. It's like, what do you mean? Like, this is a no-brainer. Of course you want your children to go overseas, but not really thinking of, because at the time I was young, I didn't have my own children, so not really thinking about, no, you're really talking about taking someone's child thousands of miles away across oceans, and you want them to trust that they will be okay with you. It's a little bit more than just put your money down and get your ticket, let's go. So having those types of conversations with the parents, not just in terms of the experience, but also making sure that they knew that their children were going to be safe. Like, we're not going to do anything that's going to jeopardize their children. We have all of these legal things in place on top of the fun experience that they're going to have, being able to see all these different locations while we're there.
Okay, good stuff. What have you had any other experiences with youth abroad after that first experience?
So after that first experience, I didn't get another opportunity to take youth overseas until I started working in my current university. And so with this university, I have taken students to London, I've taken them to Guatemala, I've taken them to Italy, and I took them back to Guatemala, then I took them back to London. So I've taken multiple trips in some locations. And what's helpful is, if I have a familiarity with the area, then that puts the parents at ease. But there's still, from time to time, you'll get the nervous parent that's not real sure about, oh, you're taking my child overseas. I mean, I know they're technically an adult, but it's still my baby. So they want to make sure that everything is in place for them. The difficulty that I find is not so much getting the students around it, because students love being able to have the opportunity to study abroad. What I'm finding, though, is that a lot of times some of my students of color don't see it as something that they can do. So that ends up being the hard sell, trying to get them to see that this is something that is going to be beneficial for them.
So let's focus in on that aspect as we're going on our conversation here. What are some of the barriers that you see for that sort of mindset with young students of color? What are they thinking? What's holding them back to being excited about going to another country?
Well, and I'm quoting one of my students that I've actually heard say this. We're talking about this whole idea of being able to study abroad. I was doing recruiting actually for the Guatemala trip, and I thought that the student was going to be perfect and you'll enjoy it. I know you're a Spanish minor. This is going to be awesome for you. And her response to me, and I quote, was, "Study abroad, that's a white girl thing." Wow. So what do you mean? My heart sank. I was like, wait, what do you mean? But looking at it, taking a step back and looking at her perspective, what she sees in all of the brochures that they have advertising about study abroad, and the various people that talk about how wonderful their experiences are, it did primarily tend to be white female students that were recalling these experiences. And if they don't see that they can relate to the folks that are going, then they don't see it as a benefit to them being able to go. So it helped a lot that when I was doing recruiting, it was, no, I've been here before. I've done this. I've worked there. These are some of the wonderful things that you'll see while you're there. And that helps because, oh, you've been? Okay, well, I'll go if you've been. Because they had now a model in their head of someone someone that looks like them that's done it before. And I don't think there's enough of that for them.
There's also obviously the parental influence come into that too, that maybe many of the parents haven't traveled before. So they say that, you know, how come they get the opportunity and the parents don't get the opportunity, but they do. And again, that parental mindset of not expanding the vision.
Yeah, there's also this whole thing, they talk about it a lot, especially when it comes to students of color and study abroad, this idea of social capital, where if as a collective, you don't see the value in going and studying abroad. You're supposed to go to school, you're supposed to study your subject, you're supposed to get your degree so that you can get your job. Study abroad, I don't see the benefit in that. So because I don't see the benefit in that, I don't think you should waste your time doing it. And that can tend to be more so a first generation college student issue because parents don't, the fact that you're even in college is brand new to me. So now you're talking about you're going to college and you want to leave the country. I don't understand how all of this is going to get you a job. And that's really what I'm sending you to school for, right? To get a job. So because that social capital piece tends to be a little low in certain families and amongst some communities, primarily, I would say primarily the Black community, because it seems to be that concern that we tend to have when it comes to studying abroad. That's what you end up running into. So you have to be able to give them those options, help them to see how this really is more than just a vacation, which most people think is a vacation. It's not just people of color that think that.
Okay, so I want to contrast something here. So from the time you did your first excursion with young people, have the mindsets of the parents move forward and have obviously your first group, they were excited to go, probably a lot of them. How have their mindsets, parents and students, changed, if any, since you first started doing this?
I think the parents are starting to see more of the value in it. This focus that we had, well, we don't now. We're going back inward politically in the United States. But this focus that we had when it comes to internationalization and making sure that we were globally competitive, all of that played a factor in being able to shift the mindset a bit. In order for my child to get a good job, they need to have this international experience. Okay, well, that makes more sense to me. In order for me to be able to have a leg up on other folks that might be applying for this job that I'm applying for after graduation, if I have study abroad listed there, that might help me a whole lot more. Okay, now I see the value in that. So I think that when we were concentrating on this whole idea of this global competitive market, when it comes to the workforce and all of that, that helped a lot with the mindset shift in terms of people being able to do more.
Fantastic. Does it get easier for you to do and execute this since you've done it a number of times now?
I think it really does depend on the location. There are some places that are easier than others, and then when I go to a place for the first time, it makes it hard. So Guatemala for me is easy because I've been there. I know exactly what to do. Nope, we're staying in this hotel. We're going to go here. We're going to have this. We're going to have dinner in this place. We're going to be in this city for a couple of days. These are the tours that we're going to take. I can whip it off. But 2 summers ago, I took some students to Italy. I've never been to Italy before.
Right.
We were going to 3 cities. We were going to be there for 10 days, and it was 21 of them.
Wow.
So, yeah. So it was a serious learning curve.
Okay, so let me ask, this Italy trip, or when you do these excursions, I hope there's other people with you. It's not you by. Oh, good.
No. Oh, no. There would be no way I would have taken 21 students by myself to Italy. Oh, God. No, there were other folks that were there. We actually have a satellite location in one of the cities in Italy. So that kind of helped too. So being able to have the two instructors, myself and the other professor that went, and then we met a team of folks that also worked for the university when we got to one of the cities. So that helped a lot in terms of making sure that we were able to maneuver through a little bit better. But that layover in Charles de Gaulle Airport was very interesting.
Okay, I'm sure there's stories, and maybe they'll come out in a book one day. Maybe. All right. Why, just in a wider space here, do you see more Blacks traveling abroad? Just in general.
In general, yes, I absolutely do. One of the things that I take a step back because I do see a lot of us going to all these very exotic locations, and we're having these wonderful eat, pray, love experiences, and being able to balance that with, say, the expat life, where expats are a little bit different. When they go overseas to live, they're in that country and they're functioning as a person of color in that country with all of the burdens that might come with that. So you'll have these wonderful photo shoots of folks in Bali and all the wonderful beaches and the lovely outfits just kind of flowing in the wind. And then you have the expat who's been in Poland for the past 6 months, where they're not all that accustomed to seeing so many brown faces, and they get treated totally differently. So there's this dichotomy of sorts when it comes to the experiences of being overseas, the short, quick tourist vacation versus the folks who are actually doing other types of things that have them more involved with the people of that country. I think that makes a big difference in terms of how people are able to see and understand their experiences.
Now I'm going to break it down even more. I have seen I've witnessed when I have these sort of conversations about Blacks traveling abroad, it's highly Black women more than Black men. Is that and now maybe it's changed?
I think documented. I think you might, I would argue that it's probably the same amount of people in terms of men and women who are traveling overseas. But I think as women, there's more documentation of it. So you have the photo spreads and the photo shoots that they have in order to be able to show these wonderful places where they're going. And so I don't know if it's I can't say from my perspective, because I'm in a number of some of those social media groups around travel. And I see more men posting about their trips than women. The women will post a picture, but the men will talk about experience. They actually engage more about some of the things that they've done.
Did you ever think when you first started that it's grown into, I'm saying this in a good way, the monster that it's become?
I didn't, because when I first started, when I first told some friends from high school on summer vacation from college, I'm going to go to Mexico next year. What? Why? And that was the response that I got. And even years later, when I took my first trip to Senegal, I'm going to Senegal and I'm going to be there for 2 weeks and it's going to be amazing. Well, why do you want to go to Africa? And in my mind, I'm like, well, why not?
Wow.
Why not? Can you imagine? But I think it's shifted quite a bit in terms of how people are able to see things. So before, I probably would whisper to someone who I thought would be excited for me, hey, guess what? I'm going to Mexico. Shh, don't tell anybody. Versus now, it's this all-out announcement. I put something in the paper, billboards. Hey, guess where I'm going this week? Because I think there'd be more cheers and affirmations around it because it's more accepted.
You had mentioned a little earlier in our conversation about a young person saying that basically they're saying, well, travel is a white thing because they haven't seen. Do you see travel companies a little bit more now trying to market to people of color?
I see a lot of travel companies of color marketing to people of color. I
Right.
think there are still some places with some of those tried and true ones, won't name, no need to advertise, but some of those tried and true ones don't always think about what that experience would be, because it is a very different experience. I've got a wonderful story about an experience in Spain, but because of that different experience, being able to have travel companies of color being able to help with the trips helps to be able to acclimate the travelers before they go. Look, this is what's going to happen. This is what you might run into. These are some of the things that you might see in order to get them prepared for the ways that they'll experience the country that'll be different from someone who isn't of color.
So, have you noticed more travel companies of color during your journey?
I have. I've seen a huge increase.
Wow.
I've seen quite a few, actually, where it would be really hard to find. Like, you might find a travel agent here or there. Remember years ago when I was doing study abroad, but I think now there are companies that focus on the Black travel experience. This is what we're going to do. These are some of the things that we're going to see. We're going to take this trip to Cuba, but we're going to do Afro-Cuban culture. So you're going to take the salsa classes, yes, but we're also going to take you to some Santeria workshops, and we're going to do all of these things and have you mix and mingle with the Afro-Cubans in a particular way, which is something that's interesting in and of itself, because most Afro-Cubans say I'm Cuban and I'm Black, and there's no Afro-Cuban because we're all Afro-Cuban.
Go figure.
But they have these special ways of being able to target not just what they'll experience when they're there, but even shaping the travel so that they can have a diasporic experience of sorts. So we're going to take you here, and you're going to experience what it means to be Black in this country from the people who are in this country.
Can you share some special moments during some of these journeys?
Good special, interesting special.
Hey, I just whatever you want to share, it's your show. I'm just steering the ship. You're driving the ship.
One of the things that I think is really interesting, talking about how we experience countries in a very different way. I did a professional development in Spain a couple of years ago, and during that professional development, I was the lone one in the group, and we were doing what you would do. You're in Madrid. You're gonna go and see what's happening at night, and you're gonna walk the streets, and you're gonna go to restaurants and have tapas and the whole bit. And walking with these groups of women who didn't look like me. So we're having a good time. We're having conversations. People can tell that, of course, we're not from Spain, but I would hear little whispers from some of the Spanish men on the street that were propositioning me as we walked past, that they wouldn't necessarily say to the other women that were walking with me. And being able to explain that to them, because it wasn't really their experience. They couldn't really understand. Well, I don't understand why you're so upset about that. I mean, maybe you misheard. No, I speak Spanish pretty well. I think I know what he was saying. It's pretty clear. But being able to try to explain my Black womanliness to these women in the midst of these experiences, what made it really difficult, but it also changed how I saw the city. I saw the city in very different ways, where they would say, oh, it's great. If you want to go out late at night, you can just walk the streets and it's not to be a problem. And I would tell a Black woman, no, don't do that. You better make sure you got somebody else with you, because if you don't, this can happen, this can happen, this can happen. And even having those conversations, because we were there for an intercultural professional development, and even being able to talk about that. Look, if you're going to tell Black students that they can come to Madrid, you better make sure these Black students know this. Don't just tell them everything is all peachy keen and hunky-dory, because they're not going to have the same experience. And trying to help them to understand that is one special story that I have. But good special stories. My first trip to Senegal was amazing. I got the opportunity. It was because it was our first time there, and it was really welcoming. It was not just because everybody has their various stories. Everybody has their African experience, and whether they good, bad, or indifferent, they want to make sure that they share it with folks. And one of the things that I loved about it was I never felt as though I wasn't welcomed back, if that makes any sense. So we went to Goree Island, which is where they had the House of the Slaves, where they would bring all the folks that did the long walk and getting ready to put them on the ships. And for our tour, the tour guide actually waited. He let everybody except for the Black Americans go and take their tour, and then he took us separately and told us a different story. And it was so impactful. Granted, we had tears in our eyes by the end of the tour, but it was such a marvelous experience to be able to think that he took that much care. It's like, no, I need to tell you all this story in a very particular way in order for you to really get the full range of what this building actually means for you as a Black American. Was a phenomenal experience to have.
Wow. What, okay, I've got a number of, I've got a number of conversations here. How do you balance being a mother of 4 kids, being an educator, being a wife, and doing this?
Well, you got to find the ways to be able to kind of finesse it all together. So most of my most recent travel has really been through work. So I'm taking students to these various places. So I'm actually teaching classes that involve them being able to travel overseas for even a short amount of time. The last few times that I've actually gone overseas, with the exception of the Italy trip, we did our travel just during spring break. So it's easier for me to tell my husband, hey, I'll be gone for a week and I'll be back, versus I'm going to do this 6-month study abroad and I'll see you in December. That wouldn't quite fly. But being able to spend like 7 days here and 10 days there, like making smaller pockets, versus when I was younger and I was doing study abroad and I was gone for months on end and then coming back. It looks different. It can still happen. It just has to look different to fit the life.
Wow. That's amazing. Amazing. What has this journey taught you about yourself?
Well, it's interesting because when I did my dissertation was about how all of these experiences that we have as Black Americans overseas really does change the scope of how we even see ourselves as Black. It changes how we define ourselves. It changes how we interact with family, because our experiences overseas have this huge impact on how we understand our position in the world. And being able to spend 3 months in Mexico in the experiences that I had being a Black teenager in that country makes my experiences as a Black woman look very different than if I would have never left the streets of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I grew up. It's a totally different thing there.
Wow. Has your husband come on any of these trips with you?
He hasn't yet, but he's taken his own. So.
Oh, excuse me.
He's been some places I haven't been, so
such as
we've got some catching up to do. So I've been to Brazil, but I went to Salvador and he went to Rio.
Okay.
So he was in Rio for law school at the time. He's been to India for when he was working on his MBA. He's been to Poland. He's been to he's been to Venice, Italy, where I haven't been to that place yet. He's been to Paris before, so he's been a lot of places I haven't been, and vice versa. We're just trying to figure out where do we meet in the middle. Okay. So we're actually trying to see if we can take a family trip overseas next year. So we're working on that one so we can get the kids to get some experiences overseas too.
So the destinations that you pick, why do you pick them? And oh, by the way, Dr. Tachi says hello.
Hey, Dr. Tachi. A lot of times I pick it primarily for my own interest. I really want to go and see this place, so let's see what's happening there, shall we? But in terms of the family trip, the trip that we're looking to do next year, the first and foremost was, where can they use the language? That was first and foremost. What country can they use the language? And that leaves it open still to quite a few countries. So then it's okay. So as a family, and countries, knowing my familiarity with them, which ones do I feel the most comfortable taking my small children to, so that they might be able to get this experience? And then that adds the filters, and the numbers get smaller, and that's where we were able to come up with a short list that we're still kind of fighting through to determine, well, not necessarily fighting through, that we want to determine where we're going to go next year.
So I just want to understand correctly. So you make the choice of where you take the students to, and if that's the case, no problem. But have they ever come to you and say, we want to go to this destination?
I have not had that yet, but with the class that I teach, the destination is really determined by the professor and their familiarity. So I did Guatemala and London because I had done them before and I know the areas. Whereas this year, I'm not teaching the class, but the person who is teaching it, he's taking them to Berlin because he knows Berlin very well. We've had teachers in the past that I know Rome really well, so I'm going to take them to Rome this year. So it really does depend on the faculty. And what I encourage the students is that there's some place you want to go, then let's build rapport with your faculty so that you can figure out who knows these places, so you can toss their name in the ring so we can pull them up to be able to teach the class for you so that you can go.
How much work does it take to pull one of these jaunts off?
It's a lot, because especially when we're thinking in terms of students, you've got to be able to make sure that really the only thing they have to worry about is their spending money and keeping up with their ticket and passport. Right. And everything else has to be sorted out for them. So hotel, and if we're going to dinner, that's got to be paid for already. So it's just kind of walk in, sit down, eat, walk up and leave. Transportation to all of these various things. I think the wildest thing is we decided on a whim, because they wanted to do it, to take the train in Italy to get 21 students on a public train in Rome. Was the most fascinating experience I could have possibly had.
No video?
Oh, no.
Oh.
No. But trying to sort through, the money and you got to put the euros in here in order to get your ticket, and you got to do this, and trying to sort all of this out. None of us speak Italian. So that made it even more fun, but it became a teachable moment, because what are some of the things that you would need to do if you were in Rome by yourself, dear student, and you know that you don't speak the language? How would you have done that whole process without asking, without being able to speak the language? What would that look like for you? Because you had the benefit of having a couple of people that knew a little something that was with you, so you got some secondhand knowledge. But if you were by yourself, what would that look like? And getting them to really think critically about what it means to travel in a country where you don't speak the language, and some of the barriers that you don't think about that you might run into.
Nice. So do you do any documentation of these trips?
I do keep a blog when I take students on trips. So I have a blog that it goes live every time I travel. So folks always know when I'm traveling because the blog goes live. But I talk about the experiences. I try to be as general as possible when it comes to the students, because of course, they're still students of mine, but I talk about my experiences. What is it like to be a Black woman with these students, and traveling, and what are some of the things that I see that they might not see, and how do we navigate through all of this stuff? I do have the tendency to do that, and I'll put pictures up and things like that. So the blog is called Black Away from Home. It's on WordPress, and so anybody can go there now and see some of my old trips that are there. My couple of trips that I've taken to London, to Guatemala, even the trip to Italy with the 21 students was documented while I was there. So you'll see a lot of stuff about some of the experiences there. And
we definitely gonna have to go check out that Italy. That sounds like there's so much more that you could share, but we'll just go there. We'll just go there. Share with our audience, especially our Black audience, what, in your opinion, they are losing out on if they don't get a chance to travel abroad. Sorry.
One of the things that it seems cliche, but it really does mean a lot when it comes to how you're able to see, again, that positionality in the world, is the experience of it. The act of actually taking your physical body out of a comfortable space and purposefully and intentionally putting it into an uncomfortable space in order to be able to see see through the eyes of somebody else that isn't a neighbor, auntie, cousin, grandma, but it's somebody who you don't even know, and being able to see how they see you and how you see them is really important in terms of us being able to solidify what we feel our definition of self might be. It makes it so that this experience where you might have thought, well, you know, I'm a Black woman because I grew up in this neighborhood with these people, but then you go to a different country and there's a different reception of who you are. They don't care about that neighborhood. They don't care about who you know on the block. They're engaging with you and you alone, and what that means and how you're able to establish who you are and strengthen at many times who you are because of those experiences. So you want to be able to travel so that you know for sure who you are as a Black person. Okay.
What percentage of your students that go on these trips, especially the first timers, have passports?
I'm going through all of the numbers in my head really quickly. I'd probably say out of the groups that I have taken personally, probably about 60% have passports.
Wow. Mm-hmm. And those who have passports at 60%, what percentage of those individuals have traveled outside of the U.S.?
Most of them had at least one stamp.
Good.
But I'll be honest, some of those stamps might have said Jamaica. They weren't always, they were more so, I went to Cozumel for spring break, or I went to Cancun for spring break. So yes, it is still an international stamp. I'm not knocking that at all. But in terms of, there is a serious difference. There's a vast difference for me, for folks who travel for tourism versus those who travel for other types of experiences. Right. So the stamp counts, but the experiences are very different for me.
Right. What has all these journeys, some of the things it's taught you about yourself?
It's rejuvenation for me. I see it as, you know, everybody has that thing that's that reset button for them, right? For some people, it might be a massage. For some people, it might be music. My reset button is travel. That is my reset button. If I go overseas and I spend some time there, I come back just totally refreshed and renewed, because I've had this time with myself to really look at and see and reflect on who I am in this world and what that means towards how I do research, so how I approach my classes, how I even approach my family is different after those experiences.
Nice. Geez. If any, what sort of transformation have you seen in some of these students after they come back from these trips? Because you just shared with us how your life is different and better after these trips. What are some of the things you've seen in some of the students after they've gone and come back to from one of these excursions?
Well, I have one student who sticks out the most to me. She had never left the country before. And she took a risk and she went with Dr. Anderson to Guatemala. And Dr. Anderson was 6 months pregnant.
And
she went anyway. But she was a textiles major at the university. Okay. And she had set in her mind she was going to be this couture fashion designer, and she had her whole plan laid out. And she goes on this trip with me to Guatemala, and we spend some time. I gave them an opportunity to kind of sit in one of the Mayan burial grounds, and there were some women that were there that had the textiles of the traditional wear on, and we sat and we talked with some of the shopkeepers, and I did some interpretation for them so they can be able to ask some questions. And when she came back, she changed her entire capstone to be a Mayan influenced fashion line.
My goodness.
Where she used the textiles and the inspirations from what she saw in Guatemala to create her entire capstone. And she got a really nice job with that portfolio. Wow. So it's like, pat on the back, Dr. Anderson. But But that's the one that stands out the most to me, because she was really scared. She was nervous. She had no idea. She's like, I'm trusting you with this because you said, my dad said it's important, and I trust you. So whatever we do, we do. I had her climbing volcanoes.
Wow.
And I was 6 months pregnant at the time. So I got to the first hill and I said, okay, so when y'all come back, I'll be down here because I can't do the rest. So they basically climbed a volcano by themselves,
right,
with me just kind of at the bottom of it, waiting for them to come back. And it was transformative for her. And that's what I look for. I mean, she was a student of color. So those are the things that I look for. Those are the stories that I love to be able to retell, and being able to gather and collect those types of narratives are what make it worthwhile.
Would you like this to grow bigger, or are you happy where it's at?
Oh no, I want it to be bigger.
Okay, so what needs to happen in your opinion for it to get bigger?
I think a lot of times with because I think being able to talk about that social capital more with students, and I think making it so they don't need to say no. So things like, I've got a grant. Well, I don't, but in my dream world, I do. I have a grant that's going to pay for you. All I need you to do is just say yes. We'll take care of your passport. We'll take care of your ticket, your stay, all of that stuff. Just say yes. You say yes, let's go. And taking a group of students that way. That's my dream, to be able to have that sort of thing. So there's no excuses for them to say no. There's no excuses for them to say, oh, I can't, because I would have answered all of those. Nope, I got this. Nope, that. Nope. Okay, now what? Well, my mom doesn't want to go. She doesn't want to go without me. Okay, well, tell her to come on. We'll all go. Let's have fun.
Oh my! Well, Dr. Tachi is saying you should pat yourself on the back.
Thank you, Tachi. I appreciate it.
So, have you? And for those who don't know, Dr. Tachi and Dr. Cami are great friends, and everyone do catch Dr. Tachi's wonderful weekly broadcast called Mediascope.
Yes.
Every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Periscope, Facebook Live, and I think now Instagram Live. She's on 3 different platforms. She rocks the house.
Yes,
so I've got to make sure that gets in. Have you approached any organizations in regards to grants or funding? And you don't have to tell us who they are, but have you done that as of yet?
I have actually, because I do have in my back pocket, I've got a nice little 501c3 for this very thing.
Wow.
So I have tried to solicit grants, and being able to see if there's a way to be able to let me just get the first trip. If I can get the first trip and document it, I know that it's not going to be that much harder to do anything else. Because especially with the way that the funders and sponsors are these days, once they see that documentation of how successful it is, then they'll keep funding it. So I have gone to a couple of different organizations, and the viability of being able to take only students of color overseas has come into question. Oh. So I just tweak the language, and I keep trying until somebody says yes, and it's coming. I know it's coming.
So these organizations have given you pushback because it's students of color?
It's too exclusive. It's been some of the responses that I've gotten back from reviewers.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
But in the country that you live in, that's not surprising. I just leave it at that. Well, yeah. I know that funding's going to come. Mm-hmm. Would you have done anything different
in terms of with students?
So where this started to where it is now, looking back, would you have changed anything?
I probably would have done more. I think I would have gone more places. I think I wouldn't have my first trip to Spain, despite the fact that I speak Spanish, my first trip to Spain was in 2016. I would have changed that. I would have gone sooner. I would have gone to Brazil so much sooner. Oh gosh, Brazil enticed me. Okay. They really did. They got me in Brazil. Yeah. Especially in Bahia, where you can see all the African influences. Oh yes, I'm definitely coming back. I would have gone sooner, and would have gone more frequently. And so in terms of if I would change anything, I would probably change the number of trips that I've taken. Multiple trips to these 17 countries as opposed to just one-offs here, but some others that I've been more 3 or 4 or 5 times to, with these one-offs kind of sprinkled in. I would want those one-offs to be multiple trips.
Have you ever visioned your family living in a foreign destination?
I have actually. Just I think about where would that be? So I think about Spain sometimes because it's close to being able to travel to the different places. I think about London, so they wouldn't be so stressed out about the language thing while we were there. I think about having. I've always wanted to have some summer property in Africa somewhere where we can be able to go and be able to just be there for however long we want it to be. That's always been a dream of mine, so I'm still working on having that come to reality. Mm-hmm. So absolutely. Mm-hmm.
What do relatives and family think of what you've done with this great idea?
I guess it depends on the family member.
That's why I was asking. That's what I wanted to get to.
My mom loves it. My father loves it. You know, you have the cousins that kind of look like, well, why do you need to do all of this? What's wrong with just staying at home? Or that's you do those things. I can never do that. And sometimes I do ask them, well, why? Why can't you do it? What is it about just? I'm not even asking you to go. I'm not asking you to go to India. Go to Cancun.
Yeah.
Just go to Cancun. You know you'll be covered there because it's a tourist spot. So you'll have all the creature comforts that you're looking for. You'll have. So why not just go? Oh, I don't know. And you know we start to come up with our own excuses, but I keep pushing it until finally they say, okay, fine, I'll go.
There you go. Would you envision doing this full time?
In terms of traveling with
yeah, with this,
absolutely. Absolutely. I would love to do something like that. That would be an awesome thing. Like that's actually my dream to be able to, hey, I'm taking 50 students a year, students of color. We're going to go here this year. This is where we're going to go. And we're going to spend some time there. You're going to spend extensive time, not just a week. We're going to be there for a minute so you can really see what's happening. And then we'll come back next year. We'll do another place and giving them different experiences of different countries. Because I love the petty side of me, I must say. The petty side of me wants to have that student that people assume certain things about to drop their passport on the table and they see 45 stamps in it because they've been to all of those countries. I would love that. Just the look on people's faces. I envision it and it just makes my heart sing just a little bit because that's that petty side that you have. But yeah, absolutely.
So for students who haven't had a chance to travel outside of the United States, students of color, what are some, if they don't do it through your program, what are some suggested locations you'd say you should check that place or check that destination out?
I would definitely say get to a safe major city on the continent of Africa. So Dakar or Accra is a good place to go. Someplace go to Joburg in South Africa. Go somewhere where you can say that your feet were planted on that ground and being able to see what it looks like to be the best word for me is to be in the majority in a country. What does it look like? What does it feel like to be in a majority? And what are some of the things that you see in terms of the air about them, about being the majority and what that means for how they see themselves? And I would want any student of color to be able to have that experience. I would also want any student of color to be able to see the places where there are other Black communities. So going, of course, to Colombia, going to Nicaragua, there are parts of Guatemala and Mexico that have Black populations, going to Costa Rica, going to Brazil, and seeing what it looks like to be Black in those places. Do you see similarities? Do you see differences? What is it about their experiences that you can relate to, that you can connect with, so that you can be able to bring that back? Those would probably be the two biggest recommendations that I would give.
Dr. Tachi saying, excellent suggestion. What is your message to parents who are holding their young people back to travel to these destinations?
I have two hats to put on.
Okay.
The first hat is going to be the hat of a potential employer for your baby. And if I was to look at your child's academic resume and see that they have this extensive experience overseas, that makes them a more viable candidate. That makes it so one of the things that they talk about when it comes to language and experiences overseas, your salary increases by like five digits. We're talking $7,000 to $10,000 just for having those experiences. It doesn't even have to be a year's worth of experience. Just being able to say that you did a study abroad could increase the potential salary and earnings of your child. So that's first and foremost. I mean, money is the where we can usually hit folks. So that's a good place to start. The other thing is allowing them to be able to have the moment to go overseas so that they can really know who they are. You have done an awesome job with raising your child up until this point to make sound decisions, to do anything that they need to be able to do in order to succeed as a mature adult in this world. Allow them the space to be able to really see themselves in the world and really apply all of the training that you've given them for the past 18, 19 years.
Excellent. What's next?
What's next? So again, I'm planning this trip for my family, and I want to bring some folks with me. So I don't want it to be just my family. I want it to be a few other families that are coming with us when we take this trip. So I'm really excited. So I want to be able to see what does it look like to take not high schoolers, not college students. What does it mean to take families with smaller children overseas? And what are some of the things that you need to take into consideration? What are some of the activities that they might need to do? I want to see what it looks like for families with smaller children to be able to travel, to be able to knock that pain point out too. That's no longer an excuse. Your children being too small? Nope. I've done that. This is what it looks like. Come on, let's go. I want to be able to have that under my belt as well.
And when are you scheduled to take another group of young people of color to a different location?
That is actually the trip that I'm trying to do next year. So the trip that I'm trying to do, that I'm planning with my family, I want that to be Black families. I want that to be my family and several other Black families to go with me. So 2019.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Do you have a location in your mind?
I do. I do have a location in my mind. In my mind, I would love for us to go to Guatemala, because there's so much for small children to do and experience there that it's family friendly, it's safe, which is always really important, and it's easy to maneuver, so it makes it easy to travel through the cities and to get around with the small children. So I would love that. And of course, the language thing doesn't hurt.
No.
In terms of making
Dr. Tachi saying, when are you going? I'll come. So Dr. Tachi's on board already.
Summer 2019. Come on.
All right. So you mentioned about safe places. Where are places that are, in your opinion, you have to watch your back?
Well, I think in all reality, you have to watch your back anywhere. A major city is a major city.
Sure.
It's New York and DC, same issues. Chicago, same issues. It might be more extreme in certain neighborhoods that there might be in others, and that's the same thing overseas. Yep. So it's really important that that if you go to a city that you've never been to before, really look and see, well, what are some of the where are some of the heavily trafficked areas that I might want to consider staying near, where are, like, what we have to do when it comes to taking students abroad. We have to be able to know the police stations and the hospitals and the clinics that are the closest to the hotels where we're staying. Do that type of research so that if you decide to stay in a hotel because it looks like the cheapest, but the nearest police station is 35 minutes away, that might not be the best place to stay if you've never been there before. So you really want to make sure that you keep in mind that you're still going into cities, and cities have city issues, and it doesn't change from country to country.
Well said. Well, I think you, as usual, have been out of bounds in a good way in this conversation. I think Dr. Tachi gave you the opportunity also to raise your game. As always, you two work good with each other. I'd like to say thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, thank you for having me.
No, it's always, the mic is always open for you to come on. If people want to find out more about you, how can they do that?
I can be found at Bilingual Brown Babies. So you can send me an email to bilingualbrownbabies@CamilleJAndersonPhD.com, and I'll be more than happy to answer whatever questions you have. You can also reach me through my travel email, which is sojourningwhileblack@gmail.com.
There you go. We've got all that contact information on the replay post. I'd like to say thanks to Dr. Cami and also thanks to Dr. Tachi. I had a funny feeling that Dr. Tachi would just find her way in here some way, you know? And she says that was great. So, well, you helped us make it great, Dr. Tachi. It is Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show. I'm also a certified empowerment coach, president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching and Communications. If you'd like to catch replays of my audio epic conversations, you can go to Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Tuned In Radio, Google Play Music Store, and iHeartRadio. You can catch selected audio replays at thegoodmenproject.com and also wjmsradio.com. I'm also a certified empowerment coach. And if you'd like a complimentary 30-minute empowerment session, you can get in touch with me at Dr. VIBESHOW on Twitter, email address dr.VIBE@thedr.VIBESHOW.com. You can also go to my website, thedr.VIBESHOW.com. Go to the top, click on Contact Dr. Vibe Show. We can make it happen. I'm also a brand ambassador, and Dr. Cami would like this. I'm an international brand ambassador for Cuisine Noir magazine. Cuisine Noir magazine is the only online magazine dedicated to African Americans in food, wine, and travel. And they cover African Americans right around the world. And the website address is cuisinenoirmag.com. I'm also offer a service opportunity called Getting Media Coverage, where I help businesses and entrepreneurs get media promotion and coverage so they can elevate their business. And finally, you can catch me live on WURD out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania's only Black publicly owned radio station. It's an all-talk station. They're on AM, FM, online, and also via their app. I'm on every Friday morning, 7:25 a.m. Eastern Time, as one of the panelists on the week that was. What we do is we cover news stories of the week that got covered and the ones that should have been covered on that. So I'd like to say thanks again to Dr. Cami, thanks again to Dr. Tachi, and thanks again to you for watching live or on the replay. 3 last things I'd like to say: live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Also, sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. God bless, peace be well, keep the faith, and thanks for walking. And where I come from, walk good. Bye-bye. What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning The Dr. Vibe Show. I have hosted and produced over 2,000 epic conversations over the last 10 years. And what makes our conversations epic? We don't do interviews. We do conversations.